Cold rainy days are here, and nothing beats a big bowl of hot and comforting soup or stews. You're gonna fall in love with this Vietnamese beef stew with noodles. Yum. Hey everyone, I'm Flo, Dude is behind the camera, and we're all about simple food, simple faith. Now, aside from pho, which is my absolute favorite dish to order in a Vietnamese restaurant, my second favorite is Vietnamese beef stew. And they serve it with noodles, or they also serve it with a baguette on the side and sometimes with rice. But my favorite really is with the noodles. And so we're making Vietnamese beef stew that's a little bit more soupy so that we can have it with the noodles. We are going to use this cut of meat today. I've used it before. It is called beef finger meat, because they're in long strips like fingers, and they come packaged in a vacuum sealed pack. But it is so delicious because this cut of meat is actually found in between the bones where the short ribs and I believe rib roasts or prime rib is found. So you can only imagine. It's quite fatty and it's very, very tasty. We have used it in burgers, we grind it up, and it's so juicy. We love using it in stews. We've also have a recipe for it, like barbecued boneless ribs. You've got to check it out. It's so, I can't even describe, so delicious. They are not attractive pieces of meat, and you can see that they're almost like scraps, which makes them perfect for stews and that sort of thing. There's this little piece of fat or membrane or something along the backside of it, and you can remove it if you like, because it is a little bit tough, but when we're pressure cooking it, it does soften it a bit, but I will remove some of it. Sometimes they're easy to remove with just like peeling with your fingers. Otherwise, you can use a knife. So I did remove all of the membrane and some extra fat because you all know that Dude is all about the mouthfeel and he hates having that in his mouth. Meanwhile, my father-in-law would be appalled that I removed all the tasty bits. I have 3 pounds of finger meat, and I'm going to cut them into about 1.5 to 2 inch pieces. Okay, so you're talking about a size like this. They're quite thin, so they're uneven, but you want them to be bite-sized so they'll be easier to eat once they're cooked down. Okay, we're just going to marinate the beef with 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. And of course, I'm just eyeballing. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. 1 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice powder. Just mix it all up. We're going to let this marinate while we prepare the rest of the ingredients. I'm using 3 stalks of lemongrass, and lemongrass is pretty long, but you only use about this much of it. So I'm going to just prepare it, take off the little end piece, and take off the first couple of layers. Oh, it smells so yummy. I love the smell of lemon. So I'm just gonna bruise it, and actually getting a mallet out would be helpful. I'm gonna use a mallet because I just want to bruise it, and it does a way better job than using the back of a knife or the side of a knife. Okay, and I'm just gonna cut it right about here. And it's going into the pressure cooker, so I don't really like to have bits of lemongrass like chopped up because I find that the tougher pieces sometimes get stuck in my teeth and I don't like that feeling. So we just want the flavor of the lemongrass. That's why we bruised it instead. Same with the ginger. I have an ounce of ginger, 2 giant thumb-sized pieces, and I'm just going to bruise these as well. Instead of slicing it up. If you want to slice it up into smaller pieces, that's totally up to you. You can totally do that. Also using 3 large shallots. And I actually grew these in the garden, so I am super excited to be able to use them.
Amazing.
It is amazing. I actually grew food that we can eat. Just gonna cut them up into smaller pieces so that I can use my chopper. And along with 3 large cloves of garlic that I also grew. And I find that garlic that is homegrown is way more flavorful and juicy than what I have been able to find in the stores. All right, so simple, right? Otherwise, you can chop it up by hand.
No thanks.
Okay, I'm just using a small bunch of cilantro, and this is just for garnish and for extra fresh flavor at the end. If you don't like cilantro or you have that gene that prevents you from liking cilantro, you don't have to use it. And you can just use as little or as much as you like. We are cutting up about a 1/4 cup. I removed some of the thicker stems, but we like the little bits of cilantro stems in with the stew. Also using 2 stalks of green onion, and we're also going to just chop this up. This is also for garnish at the end and to add some freshness. And if you don't want to add it, you don't have to. We like the extra flavors. The meat has been marinating for about half an hour and it smells so good, and then we haven't even done anything yet. We're using the Instant Pot today and we're going to put it on saute mode. Adjust it to more. This means the pot will be hotter than normal. And we're gonna put a sear on the meat so that we can give it some added flavor. Adding about a tablespoon or so of vegetable oil. And just going to, I better move this bottle before I knock it over, which I am very able to do. You want them to be somewhat spaced so that they can get a good crisp on them and not just steamed. So you're gonna have to do this in multiple batches. Just gonna turn them over. And we're just gonna sear like 2 sides of it, so it's not like we're searing every side. Just want some brown bits. And this will just add to the flavor of the stew. Okay, we're only searing them for about 2 minutes per side.
Nice color.
Yeah, looks, oh my goodness. I can't even wait till it's all said and done. And by the way, when you're doing your 2nd or 3rd batches, you don't have to add more oil because there's a lot of fat coming out of this beef. But if you're using like a stew meat or something that's more lean, then you might have to add a little bit more fat oil to get a good sear on them. Okay, once the beef is done, put it all in this bowl. Okay, I'm gonna cancel the saute mode and turn it down to just a regular saute heat level. Okay. And we're gonna add our shallots and garlic at this time. Now we're talking about all the brown bits inside your pot as well. That's going to add to the flavor. Okay, and even the juices from the onion is already starting to glaze the bottom of the pot. And if you guys can just smell it, it smells just amazing.
Deep, deep aroma.
Yep, look
so
at that.
good.
And you do want to scrape up all the brown bits at the bottom, because if you don't, your pot is going to give you that overheat or burn message when it's really not burning. But it could be. Putting in our aromatics as well. So I've got a piece of cinnamon stick, 3 star anise, and 3 whole cloves, along with our ginger and lemongrass. I'm just gonna cook this up a little bit, heat it through, and that just kind of, I think the word is, helps the spices to blossom, which means it helps the spices to give its full aroma and flavor in whatever you're cooking. Oh my goodness, I totally forgot about the carrots. So I have just a small bunch of carrots. So there's 6 kind of little ones. And I'm gonna cut them into big chunks. I've already scrubbed them clean. And I'm gonna cut them into bigger chunks because the Instant Pot will cook them at the same time as the meat. And the bigger they are, the less likely that they're gonna turn into like total mush, right? Does that make sense? If you cut them into smaller pieces, they're just gonna melt into your stew, and you don't want that. All right, so the aromatics have been cooking for about 2 to 3 minutes. And remember, we wanna scrape off the bottom brown bits. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of my broth, and I'm using beef broth. And that will just help to loosen up those brown bits. Just make sure it's all clean down there. So we really don't want the pot to be freaking out in the middle of cooking. Turning off the saute mode. Okay, adding my beef back in. All of it, including any juices from the bottom of the bowl. Okay, carrots are going right on top. 4 cups of beef broth. Okay, 2 tablespoons of fish sauce. And 1 tablespoon of ketchup mayonnaise, which is a dark soy sauce. And if you don't have this, you can use a dark soy with a little bit of sugar, or just use regular soy sauce and a little bit of sugar. This dark soy sauce is quite yummy. It's almost molasses-like in consistency, but they use this in a lot of Southeast Asian cooking. And if you can add this to your list of sauces to keep on hand, it's a good one. And I'm also adding 3 tablespoons of tomato paste. And I keep my tomato paste in these little discs that I've made from the can of tomato paste. What I find is with tomato paste, they come in a little can. Most recipes will ask for a tablespoon, and then what do you do with it? So I flatten them out into about a tablespoon per disc in between parchment paper, and I store it in the freezer. That's about probably 2 tablespoons. Stick it in there. And another half of a disc, and that's about 3 tablespoons. All right, put the lid on, locking it into place, making sure the sealing knob is on sealing, and I'm using high pressure for 30 minutes. And that is it. Once it's done cooking, I let it natural release for about 15 minutes, and it completely released all the pressure in the pot, but you don't have to. I think it's just wise if you're doing a lot of soup. It looks and smells so, so good. One of the things I love about this recipe is that I can just set it, forget it, and come home and dinner will be ready. I'm gonna skim off the fat. Don't disturb it because the fat has already floated to the top. It'll be easier for you to skim. believe it or not, this is all fat. It's only because of this cut of meat is quite fatty, right? If you're using a leaner cut, you may not have much fat to skim at all, if any. All right, so this is it. I'm just gonna show you the broth. If you order it in the restaurants, often it's more red, and I think sometimes they use paprika, maybe they use a little bit more tomato in there to make it more red, but it doesn't matter. It'll still be super tasty. All right, and if you get a chance, just pick out some of these things, star anise, cloves, because you don't want to serve that. But I'm only picking them out if I see it. So these are the noodles that we will be serving it with. These are called rice stick noodles, and it's in a medium size, which is generally what you find in restaurants. And you can get smaller ones or larger ones, but this is the one that we are using. They just take about 6 to 8 minutes to cook in boiling water. And we're just gonna spoon some of the soup and beef and carrots over top. A little bit of cilantro. A little bit of green onions. I have some Thai basil that I will let Dude add on his own if he'd like. I didn't chop them up because Thai basil, or any basil, tends to brown really quickly after you've chopped them, so it's better to just serve it with, and people can rip it up and put it in their stew. Are you all ready for?
Yep. The taste.
Ooh.
Excited, always excited when we can replicate the taste of some of our favorite foods at home at, dare I say, a fraction of the cost. So cool that we have basil, this Thai basil at home. So what I do at the restaurants, they serve it up in big bunches like this. I just rip them off, and if they're bigger, rip them off into smaller pieces, and I put it right in. So I get that contrast of the cooked food with the very fresh basil, and talk about the aroma explosion in here. This. Dude, oh, awesome mouthfeel. Thank you for taking off that membrane and the associated fat. The texture of the meat is amazing in that there is marbling. Yeah, you still get some of the gristle, but the gristle goes well with the overall mouthfeel, the texture, and with the noodles and the carrots. The carrots stayed intact, not obliterated into the stew itself. Oh, so good. And the flavors, layers upon layers, complex, but so homey, so slurp worthy. Well, good.
All right, thanks, Dude. I did steal a taste, and I have to say it is so good. If you find that you need a little bit more salt, just add a little bit more fish sauce and adjust it to your own taste. For more Vietnamese recipes, check it out. I will see you over there.